and Robert's Rules of Order. Board members will be recognized up to 2 times, with priority given to those who haven't yet spoken. To help us stay aligned with our civility policy and maintain an orderly discussion, please direct all remarks through the chair rather than one another, and refrain from personal or derogatory comments about other board members. Let's continue to engage respectfully, stay focused on the agenda, and work toward productive outcomes for our community. I will now call the roll. Ashley.
Here.
Bill.
Here.
Delilah.
Here.
Eric. Here. Mike.
Here.
Wes. Karen.
Here.
Reg.
Here.
Sky.
Here.
And I'm here. Sean.
Here.
Very good. Alrighty. A reminder to everyone joining us in person that the audio and video of tonight's meeting are being broadcast live to YouTube and will be available for review later this evening. Anyone using the link to the meeting on CA's website will be able to see and hear the proceedings. And if you haven't already, please silence any phones or other noise-making devices. And for board members, just a reminder to turn on your mic when you are speaking. Tonight's timekeeper will be Mike. We go to item 2, which is the announcement of closed session meetings. CA's Audit Committee held a closed meeting on March 24th, 26th at 7:52 p.m. at CA headquarters. Committee members present were Sky Anderson, Reg Avery, Tim Redmond, Bill Santos, and Jim Young. The vote to close the meeting was 5-0. The closed meeting was authorized under Maryland HOA Act, Maryland Code Real Property, Section 11B 1114, Section I, discussion of matters pertaining to employees and personnel. Section 4, consultation with staff, personnel, consultants, attorneys, or other persons in connections with pending or potential litigation. CA's Board of Directors held a closed meeting just a few moments ago at 6 p.m. here at CA headquarters. Members present were Sky Anderson, Reg Avery, joining us at 6:33, Karen Emery, Michael Liebersuch, Eric Greenberg, Delilah Holmes, Bill Santos, Colin Sullivan, and Ashley Vaughn. Other staff present included General Counsel John Kuchno and Director of HR and DEIB, Monica McMillan Ajahi. The vote to close the meeting was unanimous, 8-0. The meeting 8-0. The meeting was closed according to Maryland Code Section 11B 111, Section I, discussion of matters pertaining to employees and personnel. Section 3, consultation with legal counsel on legal matters. And Section 4, consultation with staff, personnel, consultants, attorneys, board members, or other persons in connection with pending or potential litigation or other legal matters. And finally, CA's Risk Management Committee held a closed meeting on February 12th, 2026 at 6:33 p.m. at CA headquarters. Committee members present were Delilah Holmes, Michael Liebersuch, Sean McInnes, Sean McCullum. Other staff present included General Counsel John Kuchno. The vote to close the meeting was unanimous, 4-0. The meeting was closed according to Maryland Code Section 11B 111, Section 4, consultation with staff, personnel, consultants, attorneys, board members, or other persons in connection with pending or potential litigation or other legal matters. Those were our closed and special meetings to be held. Can I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the roll. This is to approve the agenda as presented in the packet. Ashley?
Yes.
Whoops, sorry. Ashley, yes. Bill?
Yes.
Delilah?
Yes.
Eric?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Karen?
I apologize. Yes, I couldn't find my mute button.
Thank you. Reg?
Yes.
Sky?
Yes.
And I vote yes. That is 9 in favor, no oppositions. The agenda is approved. We go to the Columbia update. Sean?
Yes, so Julie Miller, our Director of Communications and Media, is here just to give the board an update on what CA has been doing to prepare for the elections for the community.
Thank you, Sean, and thank you, everyone. I don't think I've had the chance to meet quite everyone yet, but most of you, so look forward to meeting you soon if I haven't met you already. So tonight we're just going to be giving a brief overview of what we're doing to promote voting in the village elections coming up. So a little bit of history to get us started. I just started in December, so the history that I have is a little bit of hearsay and talking with my colleagues. But as I understand it, until about 2022, voting from CA's promotional perspective was not really done. We talked about it a little bit, but there wasn't an aggressive effort to get the word out. And I believe the board came to CA with a request to do a more aggressive marketing and promotional and communication support to get the word out about voting. So our team did that. You'll see that Columbia Votes graphic there is kind of showing up everywhere now. We've done that for about 3 or 4 years. And it was a way to elevate voting and get people talking about voting and direct them to their village for more information. So each year the team does different tactics to get the word out and then builds upon those tactics and tests new ones. We evaluate the response of how it works in certain platforms and look at voter turnout, which unfortunately, as we know, doesn't usually go a whole lot up. So we're looking at ways to hopefully boost that this year and moving forward. So some challenges, as I'm sure you're all aware of, the complexity of the elections, the village to village differences, indifference or just disinterested. People are busy, they don't understand or they don't have time to figure it out, and that just brings us to stagnant voter turnout. So our objectives are to make people aware and curious about the elections and their importance in the community. So we want them to see this sign and see some messages and start to ask around with their neighbors who might know more and just, say, what's voting all about? We want to do that as clearly and concisely as possible. Voting is complex. We know we can't fix that overnight, but we're doing our best to direct people to the source of truth, which is the village websites, to get the information that they need for their village. And we really want to engage more voices in the process and impact voter turnout. So our message this year is your village, your voice, your vote. By bringing your into this, it really makes people think about, oh, there's something I need to do. And it just kind of humanizes a little bit. We haven't really had a message like that in this before. So having a message that really speaks to someone that sees this message, or that sees, a promotion, just really, I think, will help get people thinking about it. So first we started with the website. When the first ask was made a few years ago to do more, to get the word out, our team created a web site and a web page with a series of web pages that kind of told the story, but made it a journey of different pages to go through to find it. So we've streamlined and simplified and put everything on one page, one really mobile-friendly experience where people can expand upon information and find exactly what they need to. So that was the first thing we did at the start of the year. This website, web page, is a one-stop portal. So it's got a way to find your village, get the information you need, and like I said before, it really directs you to your village page so you can figure out what your village needs, who's running in your village, and get the information that's most relevant to the users. We will be soon, in a few weeks, featuring this front and center on the Columbia Association website. And we did hold a board candidate information session in February. This engaged about 16 community members, and this is something we've done every year, or for the last few years. I don't know, every year. We are reevaluating this format for greater engagement. 16 isn't great. It's an evening info session. It's hard to get people out of the door for anything or online for anything, frankly. So I think next year we'll just be reevaluating how can we show up where other people already are and have conversations about getting more involved as a board member in your village or as a CA council representative. We've done a lot of email. We have one list that's on that website where you can sign up for voting specific information. That has a 40% open rate, which is an amazing open rate. So we know the people on that email list are really engaged. On our much larger email list, we have over 60,000 subscribers. That's already been mentioned twice, and we'll continue to mention that in our email programs through Election Day. So here's some new things we're doing. On social media, we've always kind of put that graphic out and just say, hey, go vote, go vote, go vote. But we really want to humanize it this year. So we did we're doing an explainer video. You can see someone there saying, hey, this is how Columbia elections work. We're doing it in 60 seconds. So it's a complex topic, but we're going to try to tackle it in 60 seconds to tell people what this is and kind of, let them know it's really not that difficult. Just get out there and find your village information and go vote. We'd also like to find some individuals who have voted before or plan to vote and say, I vote because, or I vote to, and get real voices. These are just placeholders. We haven't found our people yet, but we hope to do some content like that that gets real community members out there just saying not really anything political or anything, for any candidate, but just saying, I vote because I love my village, something like that. And then we'll give this social content a boost. So working with our marketing team, we can boost our advertising so that not just the people who already follow us and already know what we're doing will see the ads as well. We're also putting flyers and stickers out throughout the community and digital signs and A-frame signs. You can see the digital board. That's a true picture of what it looks like there at Lake K. The A-frame board, that's just an AI mock-up, but that will be hitting lakes soon. So we don't do a lot of signage at the Lake Elkhorn dock or Wild Lake dock. It's not a practice we get a lot into just because management can be a problem, but for certain things, we think it's important to be at those spaces where the whole community is, especially on these, not the whole community, but a large portion of the community, especially on these beautiful spring Saturdays and Sundays. So we'll be doing that, and we'll be testing the QR code. If it only gets 10 scans, it's not worth our team's effort to go out there and lug a sign out. But if 200 people scan that QR code, it's something to think about. We're also just having ongoing communication with villages. We're in constant communication to get information as quickly as possible about their candidates. We do have some information on our website before directing to their website. And just keeping an eye on their stuff. We don't do a lot of promotion of their stuff, but it is interesting to see how the villages are showing up. I saw Owen Brown is doing a bounce to the ballot. That was in my newsletter from them. So we're just keeping an eye on that and encouraging the villages to get the word out in their own ways as well. So I think that's everything. Any questions or comments?
Very good. Anyone have anything for Julie?
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much.
One quick question, sorry. You almost got out of here. Last weekend when it got warm, I had a chance to get out on my bike. I got through 5 different villages, so that was a great start for me. Right now, the signs are up for the pathway plan, the bike and pedestrian plan. I thought they were pretty well placed, and if you've got people scanning those QR codes in those locations, you may want to repeat putting village vote signs in those same locations because that's a proven place where you're getting good response. So just kind of trying to help along there. So quick suggestion maybe.
Yeah, we talked about that with the open space team about what's the best place to place those A-frames. We do want to be careful of not always having something out because then it's kind of so it's kind of a special one-off for the pathway signs, but I agree, it's a great opportunity. They're everywhere.
Yeah.
And I think over 200 signs, and the last time they did that for play areas, it got 1,700 responses, or
We have 1,000 right now.
1,000 responses so far. So yeah, I think it's great to do that
All right,
strategically.
great. Thank you. Sorry to just put a break on
That's
the
okay.
conversation here.
Sky?
Yeah, I think the first year that we had that orange wonderful sticker type thing, we also had a picture frame. And are you going to be doing that again this year?
Oh, the frame that
Yeah.
was held. I don't know if we're going out with that or not. At that point, it's kind of the voting's already happening. It does bring a little bit of energy. Right now,
Yeah.
we're more focused on the promotional to get people there. But I do think it's a nice visual and get people out and about. So
As I recall, they took to various villages on Saturday morning. But it might be fun just to stick it out somewhere and invite people to get their picture taken.
okay, thank you for the feedback. There are stickers on either side of the room if anybody wants to grab any.
All right.
Cool.
Very
Thank
good.
you.
Thank you, Julie. All righty. Are we doing any, okay, cool. Sorry. We'll now move to resident speak out. As shared previously, this time is for residents to offer constructive, respectful input on the issues before the board. I ask that everyone follow our code of business conduct and civility policy. Personal attacks, defamatory remarks, or discriminatory language will not be tolerated. Speakers who violate these expectations may be asked to stop, forfeit their time, and could face restrictions at future meetings. Thank you for helping us maintain a space for productive and respectful conversation. And lastly, we ask that all residents to please submit your comments through the Resident Speak Out form online. Our first person for Resident Speak Out tonight is Sharon Boyce. And I thought I saw Sharon. Yep. Yes, as a group.
Good evening. I'm here tonight because the disconnect between this board and the residents has become untenable. Between the disastrous restoration of Longfellow Creek and the reckless proposed plan for our paths, it is clear that our community is being overcharged and underserved. We want a refund. You're charging us too much. The community has been consistent. We want our trees, our native species, and dark skies. Regarding the proposed path changes, the survey options provided were manipulative, forcing residents to rank choices they never agreed to in the first place. Specifically, under question 10, we were forced to rank 4 equally unacceptable options. Our position is simple. Leave the paths alone. Maintain the status quo. If updates are necessary in the future, switch to permeable substrates and stop using salt. We have serious questions about the lack of transparency regarding the task force and the data driving these decisions. Who established this task force and how are the members selected? Where is the evidence that the bike usage has increased since 2012 to justify such expensive infrastructure? On my daily walks, I can count the weekly bike sightings on one hand. If cyclists need more space, they should utilize the bike lanes in our road lanes. Furthermore, why are motorized e-bikes and e-scooters, which should yield to pedestrians, being prioritized over our natural areas? Wider paths and unnecessary lighting increase installation and maintenance costs while causing irreparable harm to the environment. The new lighting and mature tree removal will cause more light, air, noise, and water pollution. The additional runoff will degrade streams and may require mitigation. This plan directly contradicts our goals as we work towards becoming a dark skies community and violates the spirit of Howard County's MS4 permit by increasing impermeable surfaces. We should not be adding man-made infrastructure to our natural areas or encouraging nighttime use and lighting that disrupts a fundamental cue for plant and animal life. This causes disorientation, disrupts breeding and foraging cycles, it affects navigation, and leads to high mortality rates for bats, birds, insects, and other nocturnal species. It can even impact plant growth. Safety on the paths at night is a matter of personal responsibility. We should not be spending millions to urbanize our natural areas and destroy the tree canopy for a problem that can be solved with a flashlight or a bike light. The situation at the Longfellow Stream restoration is equally appalling. 6 years ago, we were promised improvement within 3 years. Instead, the area is in worse condition than when it started. Recently, contractors performed repairs in the snow and left the site in shambles, running over previously planted trees, leaving over a dozen crushed plastic planting tubes in the mud, and scattering plastic baling twine all over the ground. They scooped sediment out of the creek and created a new stream bank where one didn't exist. They covered it in lethal burlap netting. Most tragically, the netting led to the death of a hawk that I imagine was slow and painful. Its talons were entangled in the netting. I've seen photos of turtles trapped under burlap, and I wonder how many other animals have died this way. This is not ecological uplift, it's negligence, and I'm calling for the contractor to clean up this mess and for CA to ban the use of this netting immediately. They should rip it out and install a silt fence and plant it with plugs and seed, and they can cover it with non-netted organic material or even good old straw. They should have never done this project or disturbed this area to begin with. The design plan says it will take 30 years to stabilize, but in year 6, this section is back to square -1. When this board has funds to push through unwanted path plans and spend $350,000 on studies to eliminate community amenities like our pools, it is clear that our CA dues are too high. Appointed stewards of our streams, trees, amenities, shared environment, and millions of our dollars should never fear transparency or accountability. We must consider future generations, our current quality of life, and understand the consequences of short-sighted decisions. Please stop this reckless spending, stop destroying the natural beauty that has defined Columbia for over 50 years. Protect and maintain what we have, and respect the fact that the residents were already satisfied with our utopia before you began dismantling it. And to my neighbors, attend candidates night and ask direct questions about where people stand on these matters, but before you vote, please ask and please vote. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Sharon. And if you can make sure you submit online.
I will. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Alan Klein for a group.
Hello all. Alan Klein in Harper's Choice. First, I just want to say, individually, I approve Sharon's remarks, and I just noticed in the packet that Owen Brown put forth a request to rename their, I forget what's a village center or a meeting house, whatever they call it, for Andy Barth. And I have to say, Andy and I served on the board for almost 10 full years together. We often disagreed, and I think it'd be a great idea. Clearly, his passion for CA and his passion for Columbia was evident, and his contributions warrant being recognized. The Coalition for Columbia's Downtown has spent almost 20 years advocating for greater openness, transparency, and accountability in both county government and CA. Unfortunately, in the last 2 years, CA has gone the wrong direction in those areas. Some examples. You have reduced the number of CA board meetings. This has reduced residents' opportunities to engage with you through resident speak out. This is unacceptable. You have subverted our original Columbia Talks, CA Listens town halls into a CA Talks, Columbians Must Sit and Listen format. What is CA afraid of? A little heat? A little passion? This is unacceptable. You have confined CA board members' input in discussions into 2 5-minute slots per topic. This eliminates real dialogue, promotes the status quo, advantages the majority, and simply encourages you all to speechify, changing nobody's mind, having no real dialogue. This is unacceptable. You have limited resident speakouts when they happen and do not allow board members to engage with residents by asking them questions. This reduces real input from residents and reduces board members' ability to truly understand what our residents are trying to say to the board. Again, what is CA afraid of? A little heat? A little passion? This is unacceptable. In terms of what used to be board committees made up of residents and staff, when I was on the CA board, I only agreed to vote to transfer the board committees into staff committees based on promises from the staff that the meeting format and interactions with residents would remain the same as they had been under the charter that was in place when that vote was taken. In fact, on January 25th, 2024, your general counsel said, quote, "There is nothing in this new charter that is not transparent," unquote. Quote, "Minutes will be taken," unquote. Quote, "Agendas will be published," unquote. Quote, "The new charter calls for openness," unquote. And, quote, "It would be illogical if the staff wanted to have these committees but be secret about what they are doing." Well, clearly you have chosen the illogical. For example, the current version of the Watershed Committee was handpicked by its chair, rather than using the previous practice of members coming from each village. And meetings, as far as I know, are not streamed or recorded. This further erodes resident access and input to CA. This is unacceptable. Resident access, input, and dialogue with and to CA are fundamental to preserving residents' rights and to CA's ability to fulfill its mission to engage our diverse community, cultivate a unique sense of place, and enhance quality of life. The current practices are unacceptable. You must do better. Thank you.
Thank you, Alan. And if you can submit that online as well, please. Our next speaker is Bob Dover as an individual.
Good evening. I'm speaking tonight on the subject of the new Watershed Resident Advisory Panel. First, I begin with a quote, which actually you just heard. It would be illogical if the staff wanted to have these committees but be secret about what they are doing. That quote is from a member of the CA senior leadership team during the CA board meeting on January 25th, 2024. In a debate about whether the committee should support the board or the staff, the leadership team made repeated assurances that the staff committees would ensure openness and transparency, including the ability of the villages to appoint their own representatives, meetings being open to residents, and recording of meetings for documentation of their activities. The discussion culminated in a statement by CA's attorney that it would be illogical if the staff wanted to have these committees be secret. I agree with that quote. Residents who aren't members of the panel pay the same tax to CA as the members. We have the same or better education and qualifications. Our properties are just as much at risk of being impacted by CA's projects as theirs. Allowing a hand-selected group of residents to have specialized access and influence over CA watershed activities while freezing out other residents would be illogical. We now know that those assurances were false. Twice during the past year, CA staff has asked residents if we were interested in serving on a watershed committee. I, along with several other people, asked to be included. However, instead of contacting us, the staff simply reappointed mostly the members from the old WAC, and we didn't find out about this until they had already been appointed and had already held a meeting. Last week, I asked to obtain a copy of the recording of that meeting. It doesn't exist. I asked for a copy of the meeting minutes. They don't exist. I pointed out that the most recent charter requires that meetings be recorded. I was told that there's a new charter. I asked to see the new charter. I was denied. The staff has clearly violated the promises that were made in order to convince the board to transfer the committees in the first place. This is the precise definition of a committee operating in secret, the exact same thing that CA senior leadership said would be illogical. Now I'm going to leave off the last paragraph just to comment on something that was already said about the paths, and I will be submitting detailed comments about the pathway questionnaire, which I think was problematic. But the one being about adding lights at night, I hope you're all aware that, in fact, it's illegal to be on CA's open space pathways at night. It's against the Howard County Code. It's against CA's rules and regulations. Why you would want to put lights out to encourage people to violate those, it just boggles the mind. So I'll be putting that in writing. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bob. Our next speaker is Linda Ortiz-Byrd from the Owen Brown Community Association.
Hello, everyone. I'm Linda Ortiz-Byrd, and I'm representing the Board of Directors and Community Association of Owen Brown tonight. I currently serve as the Vice Chair of the Owen Brown Board, and I've lived in Owen Brown for 5 years and have served on our village board for the past 4 years. I am here today to express our strong support for honoring Andy Stack for his extraordinary service to our community. During my time on the board, Andy has been a tremendous source of knowledge, teaching me what Owen Brown Village and Columbia are truly about. His guidance has helped shape my understanding of our community's history, values, and the spirit that makes this place so special. For more than 44 years, Andy has been steady, thoughtful, and deeply committed presence in the life of Columbia and the Owen Brown Village. His service has shaped not only our community's policies and priorities, but also its character, one grounded in collaboration, respect, and long-term stewardship. Andy's leadership has never been about recognition. It has always been about doing what is right for the community he cares so deeply about. His decades of service reflect a rare combination of institutional knowledge, integrity, and genuine dedication to the well-being of residents. Even after more than 4 decades of contribution, Andy continues to serve as the Owen Brown representative to our Executive Architectural Committee, demonstrating his ongoing commitment to protecting and enhancing the place we all call home. Honoring Andy is not simply a celebration of longevity, it is an acknowledgement of the countless hours, thoughtful decisions, and steady guidance that have strengthened both our village and Columbia as a whole. His impact woven into the fabric of our community and recognizing his service is both fitting and well-deserved. For these reasons, that for these reasons, the Owen Brown Community Association and Board of Directors fully support dedicating the new Lake Horn Bioretention Walkable Rain Garden currently under construction in Andy's honor, whether through a plaque on a bench, a tree planted with a commemorative marker, or another suitable form of recognition at Lake Elkhorn. We believe this dedication would be a meaningful tribute to Andy. He has worked tirelessly advocating for Lake Elkhorn and helping make it what it is today. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. And if you can submit that online as well, that'd be great.
Sure.
Thank you. And then our last speaker is Joel Hurwitz, as an individual registered for online.
We're attempting to promote, but it keeps saying he's declining the promotion to speak, so.
Well, while we're waiting, if I could just.
No,
the record,
no, thank you.
Andy
So
said
we're going to, so Drew, did you say he's accepted it?
It looks like he's no longer in as an attendee. He might be rejoining.
If he's not rejoining, I think we're gonna, no, all right. We're gonna go ahead and conclude resident speak out for tonight then. I would like to move on to the consent agenda. Is there any opposition to the consent agenda as it was presented? Hearing none, the consent agenda stands as approved. We're going to take a brief recess if everyone's okay with that. We'll do until 7:40 and we'll come back to the room then. Thank you, everybody. All right, so we are continuing our agenda. We are now on, we're on item 7A, old business for the board governing documents. Sean.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes, you, Sean, CEO Sean, not CFO Sean. Not yet. Do you have anything to say about the meeting schedule? Because I think that's the first item first.
No, that's the first item. I'm sorry. So John's here to speak to it, but this is an item the board's seen a few times. It's really more up to you for discussion or a vote.
Okay. John, do you have any other commentary to add?
No, I mean, we've talked about it before, so, I mean, I think it's outlined in the packet what the proposed schedule is. And so it's up to the board to decide what it wants to do.
All righty. Is there a motion on the floor then?
Yes, so move to approve as presented in the packet.
Second by Ashley. Any other discussion? Eric?
Yeah, I've got a question on the schedule. So I noticed now under the December 10th, 2026 meeting, there's a red line crossing out the acceptance of the IRS 990 form. Last meeting that was in there, and all of a sudden this packet is crossed out. Why is it all of a sudden crossed out? What happened between the last meeting and this meeting? Because we never took a vote to delete this item from the schedule.
And John, do you want to respond?
We had gotten feedback from various people, at the meeting prior to and before, and I think we specifically said if anyone had any ideas to let us know for the next meeting, and this is based on that. I mean, procedurally, the board doesn't have to accept it. It's not necessary. It's not legally necessary, so there's no reason to do it, and basically that's the reason it's not there.
I moved to include I moved to undo this change and add acceptance of the IRS 990 to the December 10th, 2026 meeting.
So add the IRS 990 to the December meeting. So this is amendment to 7A. All right, so Eric has made an amendment to add the IRS 990 to the December meeting. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Discussion on this amendment. Eric?
Actually.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mike.
Mike has.
The discussion on the IRS 990 has been exactly the same for at least 3 or 4 years in a row. It's the same exact conversation, which results in no change. It's just a waste of time.
And before I go on, if for folks who are online, I can't see your hands tonight, so Mike, if you can just nudge and keep an eye on that. Eric, were you in the queue?
Yes. So this is an important document that this board should be looking at the very least. I realize that we don't have to formally approve it from a IRS regulations standpoint, but this is what we're submitting to the IRS. And this is something that we as board members, as part of our fiduciary duties, should be looking at very closely. And we should be asking questions about it and making sure that we understand what we are submitting to the government, because this affects everything. So I find it very concerning that we're not discussing it, or we wouldn't be discussing it. And I also find it very concerning that one meeting it's in the schedule, the next meeting it isn't, and looking back through the minutes, I don't see a board vote where we move to edit this schedule to take it out. So I find that aspect also very concerning. So this should be part of our discussion. It doesn't have to be a lengthy one. I know in the past we've had fairly short discussions on it, but it's something that should be discussed, should be in the packet, should be presented to us, and we should basically do our fiduciary duties.
Karen, are you in the queue?
Yeah, I am in the queue.
You're up.
So it will come as no surprise that I agree with Eric. I think the IRS Form 990 is one of our fiduciary duties. And so the fact that this board is going to now abdicate that duty, while it's not legally required, as Eric stated, for us to actually approve the 990, the IRS does highly recommend that nonprofits boards do review the 990. So I just think it's in our best interest and it's in the best interest of the residents for us to actually carry out our fiduciary duties.
Thanks. Ashley?
So I'm one of the folks who advocated before that we should reduce the schedule because the board was getting into, we were looking to fill the time for the abundance of board meetings that we had, and that led to many board members performing in more of an operational capacity as opposed to thought leadership. And so when I looked through the schedule before, I looked for opportunities to reduce it. I was on the committee that established the MBE, right, which is crossed out. And just because something is not going to be presented to the board, it doesn't mean that the board still doesn't have access to it and still view it. The 990 is available to the public. And as far as the board understanding it, my concern is that since there are no qualifications to be a board member and that many of the board positions are filled through uncontested elections, that it's not that we necessarily have folks that are tax experts that are reviewing the 990 form. So I don't think it's beneficial to require board members who have no expertise in that field to approve the 990. I do agree that it is important that they are aware of it and that they review it and ask questions to the board and to staff about it.
Sky?
Yeah, I think I'm wondering if it might be better to put it on the consent agenda. And also there's a difference, I think 2 years ago, between reviewing it and accepting it as submitted, which is just acknowledging it.
Anyone else for Bill?
Yes, just a couple things. Just for those playing along at home and can't see this document, there are several things that have been crossed out on here. It's just not the 990. There are other things that are crossed out. Just a quick moment there. Also, as the current chair of the audit committee, I want to say that the 990 will be looked at by the audit committee every year. That's part of their charter. And all board members are welcome to join and attend and to their extent participate in the audit committee meeting in December when we go over the second quarter financials and the 990. That certainly would be a great opportunity for people to exercise their fiduciary responsibilities. If the committee feels that there's something in the 990 that's important enough to forward on to the board, I can't speak for future committees, but I know that every committee I've served on there and any committee that I would serve on in the future, if it was important, we would vote to present it to the board at the next opportunity. So there is that important backstop there. It is not an elimination of the ability of board members to access this. There's a full procedure for this. And I would welcome people to come to my committee meetings. That'd be great.
Thanks, Bill. Eric, second time. Sorry, do we have other folks online? No. Okay, Eric, second time.
Yeah, I'm a little concerned by the comments that my colleague made from Harper's Choice. Mr. Chair, yes, we're not tax experts. We're also not budget experts. We're not accountants. Does that mean we shouldn't be voting on the budget? I mean, we're not pool experts. Does that mean we should be voting on pools or recreation? And there's a lot of things we aren't experts on. But what we are experts on are that we live here. We're voted to represent our community here. And I think that's important. So no, we're not experts in any particular field, but we are here to decide the strategy and the direction of the organization. And we're here to do our fiduciary duties, and one of those is to look at the 990 and evaluate it.
Okay. Anyone else? Alrighty, so again, we have an amendment on the floor, which is to add the IRS 990 to the December meeting. Is that correct, Eric?
Yes.
Okay. So that is the amendment. It was motioned by Eric, seconded by Karen. A vote yes will add the IRS 990 to the December meeting. Ashley?
Yeah.
Bill?
No.
Delilah?
No.
Eric?
Yes.
Mike?
No.
Karen?
Yes.
Reg?
Absolutely, yes.
Sky?
No.
And I vote no. That's 3 in favor, 6 opposed. We're on the main motion, which is 7A as it was presented in the packet. Eric, second time?
Well, it's actually my first time because it's a new.
It's not. I wrote it down for the F for this column.
So I'm only allowed 2 motions, 2 amendments?
Do you have an amendment?
Yes, I do have an amendment.
What is your amendment?
Yes, I move to replace both town halls with regular board meetings.
Second.
That was, this is germane because it was voted last meeting, I believe. So the board has already made a decision on this.
What?
The board has made a decision on that motion, so.
I'm not allowed to make a motion?
If someone from the prevailing side wants to reintroduce that motion, that's fine. But it was decided last meeting. Yeah. Are there any other, so right now what's on the floor is the main motion again, which is 7A as it was presented in the packet. I am not seeing or hearing any other discussion, so I will call the question. So again, this is 7A as presented in the packet. It was moved by Mike, seconded by Ashley. A vote yes will adopt the schedule as it was presented. Ashley?
Yep.
Bill?
Yes.
Delilah?
Yes.
Eric?
No.
Mike?
Yes.
Karen?
No.
Reg?
No.
Sky?
Yes.
And I vote yes. That's 6 in favor, 3 opposed. All right. That concludes 7A, I believe. And now we go on to 7B. Everyone hopefully saw that in the packet, there was, it's either a memo or a letter. I'm scrolling. Letter. It's a letter, thank you. There was a letter from the Owen Brown Community Association that's backdated a few years ago. We had testimony tonight from someone from Owen Brown. Mike, do you have a motion?
I move to dedicate the new rain garden, pollinator rain garden at Lake Elkhorn in honor of Andy.
Second.
I'll call the
Thank
question.
you. Mike? Seconded.
I have a clarifying question.
Yes.
So we're naming now, it's just a pollinator garden? I apologize, I'm out of town. So it's just a pollinator garden now, it's not the building?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Eric called the question. Is there any objection to calling the question? All right, so the motion on the floor is to dedicate the new rain/pollinator garden at Lake Elkhorn in honor of Andy Stack, correct? Okay, that was moved by Mike, seconded by Bill. A vote yes will do that. Ashley?
Yes.
Bill?
Yes.
Delilah?
Yes.
Eric?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Karen?
Yes.
Reg?
Yes.
Sky?
Yes.
And I will vote yes. That is all in favor, 9-0. Very good. We now go to the board governing docs, item 7C. Sean?
Yes, John Cuccio is here to update the board, but in the packet is the second reading of the updated board operating procedures, including the special rules of order and the first reading of the board responsibilities that have been updated.
Yes, so these, again, their background information is the packet. There's no, I really don't want to repeat that because it's redundant, but just in summary, this is the kind of the final effort to put various policies that were in different places, consolidate them, and then to bring operating procedures up to date. You'll see that the meeting schedule is in there. There were some, based on the conversation at the previous meeting, there are some amendments that appear in here. I specifically point you to the election of the chair and vice chair. In the interest of transparency, it's been proposed in the packet that those be public votes rather than secret ballots. And that process is reflected and changes the previous method of electing the chair and vice chair. And it's obviously relevant because we have a new board coming in, an organizational meeting for the fiscal 27 year, the second Thursday in May. So that's different.
The other difference principally here is the elimination of the Board Operations Committee. That was based on the feedback we had gotten, I think, sort of an object lesson in that was the last Board Ops meeting that we had that lasted 7 minutes. The idea was that the agendas would be set by the chair, the CEO, or a majority of the board could set the agendas. And the thinking was that the Board Operations Committee had outlived its usefulness, so that's the change. The rules of decorum, most of the other changes are just reflect current practices. There's really not changes from what we've been doing. I should point out, just because I think Sky pointed this out, if you look at the appendices, they go from A to C to D. There's no B. I think the B was what would be the Board Operations Committees. That's why there's no B. But when we change things, what we'll have to do is basically change the lettering so that what was C and D becomes B and C. We just have to move those up by one to fill the gap. But otherwise, the changes are reflected in the document in the packet.
All right, very good. Thank you, John and Sean. Is there any discussion tonight? Eric?
I am very, very concerned about deleting the Board Operations Committee. I mean, this is the one chance where board members can have some influence on the agenda. Some influence on the agenda. Otherwise, what the agenda gets set, and the only thing we can do is start playing around with it during the actual meeting, which is suboptimal at best. I think if we want to actually have board participation and we take that seriously, we need to let the members have a role in setting the agenda, because I know the people want to bring things onto the agenda. They've got concerns from their villages. They should be able to have a way of getting that on the agenda. And right now, if everything just has to go through the chair and there's no committee, it's very difficult to get that through. So I'm very concerned. The only other avenue is putting things on the board topics log, but things go on there and they just sort of linger on there indefinitely. So I think it's important to have this committee. It's important to take this committee seriously, not have a 6-minute meeting. And because otherwise the board members are just really have no say on the agenda. So I'm really against getting rid of the BOC.
Ashley, were you in the queue?
Yeah.
Okay.
My question was around, so on the schedule, it talks about the committees that board members serve on, but it's more just a bullet. It's not necessarily a requirement of appointment. I was curious if that is required for board members to be appointed in the first meeting, or if it's okay.
Yeah, I think there's a change in this in that it says that they would be appointed in the first meeting, but the chair could decide to do it in the next meeting. So it doesn't have to be at the organizational meeting. The chair could decide, well, I'm going to think about it. I've got your requests, and the next meeting will take that up.
Because it mentioned the board chair then appoints the board members to the audit committee, the risk committee, et cetera. I just want to be sure that we allow room for it to be decided later.
Yes, I mean, it does say that.
Yeah. Karen, are you in the queue?
Yes, please.
You're up.
Yeah, I want to comment on why that last meeting only took 6 or 7 minutes. I mean, honestly, this board this year is a 7-3 board. Well, mostly a 6-3 board because Wes never comes to any meetings. But the fact is that I was at that last meeting, and honestly, it would have been pointless for me to bring anything to put on the agenda because it would have been voted down. You guys already had it set what you wanted on there, and you guys have, if I were the majority, I would do exactly the same thing. You guys have it set so that what you guys say goes, and that's why that meeting only took 6 minutes. However, we could very well end up with a split board. We could very well end up with the majority being reversed. And I mean, I would think about this for a long time. If the majority gets reversed, you're going to want to have a say. You're not going to like it when the new majority does exactly what you guys have been doing. And I agree with Eric that, you know, we want the community to also have insight into what's going on. We know that the agendas need to be somewhat of a living document. Things change, so new things need to be added, new things need to be taken off. We understand that, but I think it's a mistake to get rid of the Board Operations Committee.
Sky?
Excuse me. If we do away with the Board Operations Committee, would it automatically, the decision would be made to do away with the topics, the board topics log? What would be the purpose of the board topics log then, if not to feed things into the BOC?
Do you want to respond, John?
I think that those things go to the chair and to the board to decide, you know, and anyone can move at any time to amend the agendas if, you know, you have the requisite vote. So, you know, I guess the feedback I got from the various persons on the board was this was a matter of efficiency, and one of the problems that has been expressed is that we've had too many meetings. It discourages people from participating as board members because it's overwhelming, and there's spinning wheels a lot of time, and this is just a method of efficiency. I mean, I understand what was just said about why the meeting lasted, but I mean, we had half a dozen people had to come here on a Monday night, you know, make an effort, and it lasted 6 minutes. Like, that 6 minutes we'll never get back. So, again, that's the justification, but obviously, you know, this is for you to decide, and the feedback we got was that there was support for this, and that's why it's in there, but if you disagree, take the vote and go ahead.
I'm going to jump in the queue myself because I actually want to double down on a point that John just made. This is actually, I think, 2 years of BOC meetings being routinely under 10 minutes, 10 or 15 minutes, including last year. And to John's point, there's a cost to those meetings because we have staff that still show up and present, and we record those meetings. And there are plenty of opportunities for board members to still give input as to what agenda topics could be, and that could look like having conversations with the chair, having conversations with the president. So I think that the onus shifts on board members to have conversations about what they would like to see on the agendas with the proper channels to get that happening. And if there's a feeling that that's not working, then there's still a mechanism to present during regular board meetings to amend the agenda. So I just want to be mindful of time utility and how we're effectively just using that and spending folks' time. Anyone else first time? Bill, Mike, Delilah? Bill?
I've got my hand up.
Oh, sorry, Reg. I'm gonna. We have Bill first, and then Reg.
Sure.
No, it's just coming, nothing yet. I'm reserving my
that's not
first
that
count.
helpful, Bill. Reg, you're up.
Okay. So I am concerned that it truly seems like we're slowly withdrawing, doing a retrograde from the purpose of being members of the board. It seems like we're going by the just sitting back and letting things happen instead of doing what the residents have asked us to do, which is to represent them. I know that it's a lot of hard work, and I've said this since as long as I've been on the board, that it's hard work. And if you are serious about it, you want to do what is right for the residents, then, you know, you suck it up and you get in there and say, okay, this is what I'm going to do. And if it means that, you know, we've got a lot of meetings to go to, well, that's, we've been doing it for a lot of years. I I just see us slowly shrinking to the point where the board becomes ineffective, unimportant, and no longer needed, and we just become a group of people that meet just to pass the buck, and then everything is left on the shoulders of the staff. And I think that's unfair to the staff, and I think it's unfair to those future board members. We need to remember we have a responsibility. That's it.
Thanks. Anyone, Delilah, Bill? No, nope. Ashley, did you want your second turn?
I mean, I feel like I'm kind of stating the obvious here. The changes that we make this year can be changed by a future board, right? If we try something out that's different and it's not working, the board can change that again. Just because we've always been doing something doesn't mean that we need to continue doing the same cycle. Columbia is going to reach 60 years soon, and as the organization grows and changes, it makes sense for our practices to change with it.
Very good, thank you. Eric, second time.
I'm wondering what BOC meetings everybody else is attending, because the one I attended this year lasted a good hour, as Bill would probably attest to. But on a more serious note, I mean, if our avenue to alter and amend the agenda is to do it during open board meetings, that's a real problem for staff, because they're not going to be prepared if I decide, oh, I want to add policy XYZ to today's meeting. Well, staff isn't going to be prepared for handling that policy. I mean, so to say that we could just add stuff at the beginning of the meeting is really unfair to staff, and it makes it hard to have a discussion on the topic. That being said, I move to include the BOC and not get rid of it.
I'd be happy to do a straw poll because we don't have an actual motion.
I just made an actual motion.
Okay. So you want to include the BOC?
Yes. So I'm not sure which, I can't find offhand which lines this refers to, but wherever the BOC is struck, I want the BOC reinserted back into the policy.
All right, include the BOC and reinsert it into the policy.
Yes.
Do you have your hand raised, Mike, for something?
This is a made-up problem. There hasn't been a single topic that a majority of the board has wanted to discuss in a meeting this year that hasn't been discussed at a meeting this year. Anything that's on the agenda topic log that hasn't been discussed is only wants to be discussed by a small minority of board members. And so we already have a solid mechanism by electing the chair to say we trust someone who is going to set effective agendas for us and just have a good working relationship with the chair to get those agendas set. So this is a made-up problem, and I call the question on the amendment.
There's not even a second on the amendment right now.
I'll second it.
I call the question.
Is there an objection to calling the question? All right, hearing none, the motion presented by Eric was to include the BOC in these documents and have it reinserted into the policy. Is that correct, Eric?
Yes.
So it was moved by Eric, seconded by Karen. A vote yes, we'll do that. Ashley?
No.
Bill?
No.
Delilah?
No.
Eric?
Yes.
Mike?
No.
Karen?
Yes.
Reg?
Yes.
Sky?
No.
And I vote no. That's 3 in favor, 6 opposed. We're still having discussion. Mike?
Appendix G, I like all the changes that have been proposed. Appendix G, which is just the resident speak out, I don't have a specific thing, just something maybe that staff can put their thoughts into before the next meeting of something about the resident speak out for groups. Because that's meant to be a time-saving measure, but a lot of times what happens is that people that are really part of the same group show up, and one person speaks for the group, and then a whole bunch of other people speak as individuals, and that's not really a time-saving measure at that point, right? So let's give groups extra time so that they can represent all the constituents of their group. So I think there needs to be some some rigor behind that as far as like, hey, what actually constitutes a group, and can other members of the group still speak if they like? And I don't know what the best way is. Always going to be kind of fuzzy, but I'd like to see some more rigor beyond that, and just before someone says like, hey, I'm here representing the human fund, right? Then that's a Seinfeld reference. So that's, I know you didn't comment. So that's my thoughts.
I'm happy to entertain other things, but are there other thoughts on what Mike just said? Okay, I would like to conduct a quick straw poll, asking staff for our next meeting to have some language and verbiage around groups for RSO. So I'm asking it in favor would be, we would be interested in seeing some language and verbiage from staff related to groups for RSO. So that would be an in favor, yes, and then for no. So
Point of order, could you make this a motion?
nope, I have made this a straw poll because I think that that'd be helpful to have staff actually draft up language for us to review at our next meeting. All right, is everyone clear about what the straw poll will ask for? All right, so those who are in favor of seeing draft language for RSO group, show of hands, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so we have 5, and then those that are not interested. 1, 2,
Reg's raising his hand.
3, 4.
Raising her hand.
Okay, so the majority of the board would be interested in that. 5, 4.
Can I have a point of, is it a point of order? I want to explain why staff is going to produce something for us that we'll be voting on. Why aren't we voting on whether or not we want, why isn't it just a regular motion to vote whether or not we want them to do this? I'm confused why you're doing a straw poll.
Karen, that wasn't a point of order, but I think I explained why I did a straw poll already.
No, that's why I'm asking, because I don't understand why we're doing a straw poll and not a motion. Why is that okay to substitute that?
Was there anyone else? Bill, I wrote your name down. Are you in the queue?
Yeah, I had a grab bag of things, and my apologies, I got to back up a little bit. Eric kind of shot the moon there for a second there. We both were on a board ops committee meeting. It did take over an hour, I think mostly because we were on it together. But for the most part, neither one of us got anything on the agenda that we wanted, so I don't know about where this majority thing comes from. So that's all water under the bridge. I think that the whole discussion about the board ops is really, it's a discussion about how does the voice of the minority get to provide time and space onto the board agenda? And I don't know if that's entirely appropriate for the board agenda. I think that the board agenda should be more about finding common ground and debating that and moving and improving the community through what we all find in common to make things better, and not just airing sides and extremes or anything. I think we should all meet in the middle, and I think if we could have meetings centered around that, we would get a lot more done, and we'd leave here smiling more often too. So as far as the resident speak out is concerned, I am concerned that if we're going to be putting additional verbiage and language into this, it's an entire topic. It's an appendix with more stuff. We're going to need not substantial, but an appropriate amount of time to debate that language all among itself, because that is, although the policy gets its third reading, that's a whole new section that comes in at the third reading. So I just want to make sure that we're smart about how we craft the agenda for our next meeting. So I just want to put that out there. And that's where my vote was for. So understood? Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Anything else? Eric, you've exhausted your 2 turns for this item. Is there anything else? Any other discussion? Okay. Sean, John, do you need anything else from us at this time?
No, I think we're good.
No, I assume we'll take the final vote the next meeting on this.
Yep, very good. All righty. We'll move on to 7D then, which is the discussion for the board goals update.
Yes, so this is an exciting time of year when we really bring the goals updates to the board about what we've been doing for the past year. First up is Dan Burns, our Senior VP of Community Programs and Services. He's going to update the board on the website overhaul, the membership rate study, and the brand awareness sentiment survey that was done that really kind of goes along with everything we do here. So.
Thank you. Yeah, as Sean said, we're going to cover 2 goals in a survey tonight. The website, the membership rate study, and the progress we've made on those so far. And then we'll go into some more detail on the results of the brand awareness survey. So first up, the new website process. So there's an extensive review of the current site. Actually, I think you all know it didn't take a very extensive review. It needs a lot of work. So the determination was, rather than kind of keep updating the existing site, we would go and build an entirely brand new site on new technology to allow us to better access and communicate with the community. The first step in that process is we engaged Emily Newhoff from CommitMe.co, a local company. She's a cognitive, I always want to say clinical. She's not a clinical psychologist. She's a cognitive psychologist, and she's combined that with her technology background to really look and use behavioral analytics and data strategy to see how people actually use the website and use technology rather than just look at analytics or the other. She really combined them. We had a 6-week process that we went through with that. It started with some key stakeholder, SLT stakeholder interviews. Really, it was all around the jobs to be done. What do we need the website to do? And as we all know, and we've seen over the years, that's not an easy question to answer because we have to balance the municipal side of what we do with the business side of what we do and make sure we're engaging all of the audiences that we have and all their needs, which is why we went to Emily to help us figure that out. So the first round was the stakeholder interviews. And then we pulled together 2 internal workshops of cross-functional teams from across the organization to talk about out in the field, how are they seeing, what are they seeing is being needed, and how is the website being used, and what feedback are they getting. And then finally, we did a community survey to figure out what the community wanted from the website. Interestingly, all 3 groups came back and was basically saying the same thing. Which is good news because it didn't have us running all over the place, but it was also very evident where we needed work to be done. We had some very clear jobs to be done. The first was a unified website, and what does that mean? So talked about the business side and the municipal side and really how do we present that. So there's an option called a federated website, which are 2 different websites. One to deal with the more municipal, more kind of governmental-ish website, and one a business website. But then our members and residents would be taking 2 completely different journeys and would never really be able to connect the 2, and it would be very disjointed. After research, we landed on a unified website. It'll be a little bit of a hybrid, which takes you to landing pages to give us more flexibility, but we will still have one site that we go to. The number one thing we heard was improved search. It's really hard to find things. We know it. The website has probably about 900 pages after all this. It's more than a decade. This website, the core of the website was here when I came. So it's a bit of it's like your attic. There's a lot of things in there. You kind of know what's there, but you're not sure where it's at. So improved search is very key. Mobile first. I mean, that's a given. In today's day and age, we have to be mobile first. Account integration, between Club Automation or whatever MRM we have at the time, being able to seamlessly move between the 2 and connect them. A better system for keeping the site up to date and relevant. Internally, we need better content governance and management, and really how we keep that site, that tree pruned, and the information fresh and relevant for our members and residents. Improve program registration and account management. How more seamlessly can we make that? Right now with the current website, you get a top layer on the website, then you go straight to Club Automation. With a new site, we'll be able to handhold further into that process and create a smoother transition into that to help make that an easier process. And ultimately a more personalized experience. we called that a contextual experience. It remembers who you are, what you've been looking at when you came last time through the use of cookies if you choose to opt in, so that if you are someone who typically goes and looks for governance, that's kind of what you'll be served up to you versus if you're somebody who is always coming registering for programs or looking for classes. So to really kind of help with that and really kind of help guide you through that. Never bar you from being any place, but help make it easier for you to get what you typically want. So those were the jobs that needed to be done. Then I thought this was very interesting, so I'm just going to spend a few minutes on this. So the community survey. Now, when this was done, more residents over 55 responded than under. So Emily went back and did some age weighting to make sure we were relevant. And it was interesting to see what the community members do on the website. So after age weighting, find facility information was 72.8%. That went up from 70%, which means the younger generation tends to look for more facility information. Find events or activities went from 48.3 to 51.4, so same thing. Register for programs, 30% to 34.7. Then we look for policies or rules. This one actually went down from 25 to 22.1%, so there's a little bit of a generational shift, as well as news and updates. That also went down. Our younger generation is not looking for news and updates on our website. And governance information dropped from 20% to 17.3%. So I just thought that was kind of interesting, looking at the feedback and how that changed in relation to the age demographics of the community. So then on the outcomes, and this just reaffirms what we just talked about after we age weighted, want better information about programs and facilities, simpler registration, improved mobile experience, single sign-on across digital services, recommendations based on interest, and clear information about CA's roles. So really it rolls right back into those jobs to be done. And like I said, it was fortunate and coincidental that all three groups coalesced around those same jobs to be done. So where are we at with that? Myself, Armsby, Julie, who was here earlier, Tim Pinnell, and Matt Blevins, who's our digital strategist, took all this information, worked with Sean, and we developed our scope of work for a vendor to actually build this thing. So right now we are beginning the selection process for the vendor. This is an FY27 budget project. So we're looking for the vendor to actually build the framework of this. Then we will work on the actual build of the website. And then the hardest part will actually be developing and updating all of the content that we have. Julie is excited to attack that and get moving on that, but really kind of how do we freshen up? How do we make sure we have the information that everyone is looking? And that's actually probably what's going to take us the longest time here. Then we will beta test the website, and then we'll move into probably launching around the end of the year. That'll all depend on the content, I think, will be the driving factor of that to make sure we have those pieces in place. But we're really excited about this, really excited to move forward with newer technology to get the information out and be able to deliver what our community needs from the website. And that was the high-level overview of the website. Any questions on the website?
Sorry, Mike?
So I'm walking head first into Colin making fun of me for being old, but personally, like, I would like, even 17% is still a significant chunk of the community that's looking for information on, CA governance and some of the data about, various things that you hear people coming in here talking about, whether it's watershed or whatever. And so I'm just plug, like, I hope that is still something that is the kind of the knowledge management about those various projects that CA is up to is.
Oh no, that's a very important part. This is not going to dictate our content strategy. I just thought it was interesting how it shifted between the age groups.
Got you. You just set me up for an old joke. I got it.
Yeah, we are very focused on making sure all of that information. That's why we're deciding between the federated and unified website. How do we deliver this to make sure all the content is available? I just thought it was interesting, and I thought the board would find interesting how the disparity between the age groups we have in the community. And that's a challenge we find across all things we do, that there's slightly different angles that everyone's coming from.
Mike is used to getting his policies on tablets, and I'm not talking about iPads. Ashley, did you have something?
I'm excited that Julie's going to be working on this, since on the Millennial Advisory Committee, that was one of the things that multiple ones of us were excited about CA updating so that younger generations can easily access. Events can sometimes be its own piece, right? So how do you anticipate the event calendar and access to registering for things like that to evolve with the website?
So that's going to be part of the process. There's going to be calendaring built in. That's one of the requirements we have for our vendor, is looking at how we build those in. And then internally, we have to figure out what that content flow is to get things on the calendar. And yes, we do have this kind of disconnect now in how we're registering for some events versus others. And that is, we'll explore that as well. And we'll see what technology is available to help us make that. But events are a big portion of this. And that's when I mentioned some kind of microsites, and those are some, like we're building a microsite for Lakefront Live now, and the whole website will be structured around that in the future. So it'll give us a lot more opportunities for doing individual things.
Great. Okay, thanks.
Anything else? Oh, Bill.
Yeah, just two quick things. First, in the last week or so, we have gotten a lot of recommendations from one of our residents. Yes. And I was just hoping that somebody's cataloging that and looking to integrate this as part of your project here.
Oh, absolutely. And we've already spoken to the resident. Okay. He's been very helpful.
Yeah.
He's been referring to WCAG 2.1, Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. That is while he's referring to a law, we're not subject to that law, because that's for state and local governments. That is a requirement that we have put out to the vendors for the new website. That was already on our list to do. And he pointed out some things that potentially we could improve on the current site, and we've already spoke to him, engaged him, and are looking to move forward. Anything we could do to get better.
This is one of those things where I'm happy I asked that question. Thank you very much. That's good to hear. Yeah. Second thing is one thing we didn't, and I know this is very high level, so one thing that was not mentioned was integration with socials and other apps and things like that. And is that part of what will be, the website, I know it's a website project, it's not an app project, but will the website look to do that operability with the other platforms and such?
That is one of our nice to have requirements. That is on the plan, but we want to get the main website launched first. So we prioritized our vendor requirements, and that's on the nice to have list.
All right, thank you.
Kind of a tier 2.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Yes.
Good plan.
Karen, were you in the queue?
I actually was going to bring up exactly what Bill brought up, so I'm good.
Okay, thank you. Let's keep moving.
Okay, good. Okay, now we have the membership rate study. This one is kicking off after a search for a firm, because membership rates are actually, there's a lot of, as I say, art and science to it. There's a lot of data that can be researched, and there's a science to understanding your customer base, which is for us Columbia, as well as our goals in making it happen. We ended up choosing to go with a company called Iris Pricing Solutions. They're a global pricing and growth strategy group. They have an office in Boston. I think their main office is in Canada, in Toronto, but they are global. They've worked with many associations and nonprofits, SHRM, the Society of Actuaries, as well as YMCAs. They worked with a very large club chain. I couldn't get them to tell me yet who it was, but they've worked in the fitness industry as well, but also Disney and View. Really excited about the balance they bring to the table, and this was one of the deciding factors in choosing to go with them. A lot of companies came to the table with data scientists. And that's great, and we have a lot of data to research, and you'll see the timeline here. There's a lot of work to do, but they have retail strategists, retail pricing strategists on staff. That's what they do. So their history in doing this is all they do. So we felt it would be the best partner for us to get the best solutions for us to work towards the objectives that we have here. One is to evaluate our current state. How are we doing? How are we? What is currently happening? assess the impact of the current model on behaviors. How is it driving sales, retention, and accessibility? Looking at all of those things. Benchmarking competitives. How do we compare to similar entities or competitive organizations so we can see where we fit into that landscape? Balance affordability and sustainability. That's a conversation we always have. It's one of our primary objectives. That is one of their primary objectives of this study as well. And then look to modernize the membership model and see, are there updates we can do? This one was my present when I came 10 years ago. I walked into the last restructure, and this is the 10th anniversary, so we're doing it again. Thank you, Sean. It's my 10-year anniversary present. But those are our objectives. The process for that, we'll kick off again. It's not too dissimilar from the website. Internal interviews to really understand who we are. That's been a challenge with other organizations that we've had. And when I get to the brand awareness survey, it took a minute to get them to understand who we are and get the survey nailed down to get the information we wanted. So it's important that we have these interviews to really get them to understand who we are and what our goals are. Then there's the data analysis for Stephanie and her team. It's going to be helping us and pulling a lot of historical data on program purchases, memberships, cancellations, length of memberships, everything that we can deliver to them so they can really analyze how our memberships have driven behavior. Then value and positioning workshops. Where are we looking to be? What are we looking to do? How do we fit into the community? How does that play into our pricing models? Then there's the online focus groups and surveys to really figure out and hear what the community is looking for and asking for. And then by the end of summer, have outcomes and recommendations. And that would ultimately lead us into the next budget process. That is the rate study.
Okay.
We're just kicking that off. Any questions?
Eric?
Yeah, so when you interacted with this particular vendor, what are we trying to optimize with this study? So are we trying to optimize revenue? Are we trying to optimize usage? What's the thing that we're trying to optimize with this rate study? And the second question is, what are the constraints? So are there certain constraints that we have that says, okay, membership shouldn't drop below a certain amount, or revenue shouldn't drop a certain amount, or some other constraint? So what are we trying to optimize, and what are the constraints that optimization is subject to?
So what we're trying to optimize is the objectives here, but primarily balance affordability and sustainability.
So what does it mean to optimize the balance between affordability and sustainability? And what does that mean?
We have long-term financial goals. We have a business to run. We have to maintain a solid bottom line. We have to cover our expenses. So there is sustainability. If we don't generate a positive net assets, then we are not going to be in business and we'll not be able to serve our mission. So we have that as a fundamental process. And then how can we do that while maintaining as much affordability as possible? So it's finding the optimum intersection between those two.
Any other questions, Bill?
Yeah, just a quick, I'm so happy that you're going to be putting up all the data for the memberships and the cancellations and tenure and all that stuff, good stuff. Is there anything that you're going to do with the actual usage and how that translates into what is done with all of that?
Yeah, they're like the list of data. I didn't cover everything.
Right, okay.
The list of data they're going to ask for, that's what I'm saying. We're going to be busy pulling data.
I am so ready to go deep on all these things, so my apologies.
They are going to look at anything we can give them.
Thank you.
They really understand. Like, that's why their scope of work and the various businesses they've worked with, they know what angles to look at and then how to interpret them. And so I'm really excited to be working with this group.
Great, thanks. Thank you.
Any other questions about the membership rate study? Okey doke.
Okay. Now, if everybody remembers, it was late fall, early winter, we talked about the brand awareness and sentiment survey that we conducted around the community. It was in September with a company called Hanover. They actually were part of the LRFP for the the membership rate study. When we did that, as a reminder, our objectives were to look at organizational level perspectives on familiarity, connection to the community through CA, and our role in making Columbia great, as well as facility use in association with CA, programs and services use and ways to increase engagement, and then communication outreach and how do we and how do residents learn about CA. So really just trying to figure out what the community felt about CA. That's what brand awareness is, as well as how they, their sentiment and their true feelings. So we talked about last time, most of the work I did last time, communication I did last time, was around who we were talking to. So if you may remember, this was a very targeted study with 650 survey responses. Very specific. The group, we told them who we wanted them to talk to. They went and found them. If they had to make 1,000 calls to get these responses, then that's what they did. And we only paid for the responses they ended up getting. So we focused on ethnicity because we wanted the ethnicity to be fairly close to what the makeup of Howard County is. The homeowners, looking at it's 71-30, 70-30 rent to own, so we wanted to make sure we included renters in the conversation, as well as community members and business stakeholders. And a business stakeholder is anyone who works on assessed property or owns a business on assessed property. So we wanted a good mix of representation in the community. That's where we ended up with the 650. That's a statistically significant number with a small margin of error. We started getting more specific than that. The margin of error started getting too big, but it really allowed us to be very precise. And then the membership ended up being, this was not a requirement. This is just how it worked out. But member includes Columbia cards as well. It's not just paid memberships, it's Columbia cards as well. The key findings from this survey were 2/3 of the residents have a positive overall impression of CA. That was good to hear. 2/3 of the residents are satisfied with CA's presence. I was going to say presidents. I'm sure they're 2/3 are satisfied with the president too. Hopefully more. With our presence and role in the community. CA is viewed as a key contributor to community desirability, and outdoor amenities managed by CA, such as pathways and open parks, are the most frequently used by residents. So those are some of the key takeaways, as well as most members feel strongly connected to the community through CA's facilities and programs, especially those related to sports and fitness. Lack of personal relevance, membership cost, and limited flexibility are primary barriers to engagement. And word of mouth and digital channels are the primary sources of how people get information. Those were the key findings that bubbled up from the survey. Now I'm going to take you through a handful of just interesting slides. They're kind of hard to read, and I'll walk you through them. We're not going to go through everything, but just some different perspectives on what was said. Now, these numbers, it says top two, and then there's a percentage beside that. That means those were the two most positive responses. So in this case, it's very confident or extremely confident. Then the middle would be neutral. Then it would be not very, and then very unlikely. So so in this case, confidence in CA facility ownership, pathways, 91% responded in the top two. They're very confident that we own those. This was very interesting that all the way down, even at the Youth and Teen Center, was 71% were confident that we owned it. So this was very good to hear and see some of the level of responses here. I will make one other comment. So the N is there. If something has an N of less than 30, kind of discard it a little bit. That's not really statistically relevant. So you don't want to infer too much if you see something that has, and there are several where the N is under 30. So don't read too much into that. So it was just interesting to see, and as I said in the key takeaways, pathways, the archives was very high, open space, the fitness clubs, the ice rink, very high on ownership. So it's good that people are associating our facilities with CA. given that we have the Columbia Athletic Club, the Columbia Gym, the Columbia Maryland Archives. We don't always use CA in that branding. Satisfaction with facility, again, top 2 facility quality, again, very strong. It's interesting, the Art Center is at 62%, but we had just done the renovation, so I think there was a transition between that. And so this wasn't just Art Center users. So again, very, very high. Open space and parks was very high. The fitness clubs, very high. We have some other opportunities to where we can work on quality. Still fairly strong. Then program impact on community, and this looked at various different programs and how programs connected people to the community. Ice skating and hockey programs, very strong connection, and that N is over 100. And it got cut off there because trying to squeeze into this little format. Personal training and group fitness, very strong one-on-one. The group fitness, 22% of our visits to the fitness clubs are for group fitness. That's why a lot of our members come. Yoga and Pilates, before and after school care has a very small N. Swim lessons. So you can see how some of our programs are really, really engaging the community and creating a connection. But there are opportunities for others where we could do better. A lot of the ones towards the bottom have smaller ends. And as one of the takeaways we'll have at the end, sustainability initiatives were a little bit low on the connection, and that's an opportunity for us to work on creating a greater connection with that. Then facility impact on community connection, open space and parks again, very high connections, the fitness clubs, the pathways. So some of the things we talked about in the middle, very, very high connection to the community felt through these services and programs that are offered by CA. Frequency of facility usage. This just shows they're using it at a high level. And again, you look at the top 2 green bars, pathways and open space and parks. That's a lot of, again, top of the list. Fitness clubs follows right behind that. Then it drops down pretty dramatically from 59, 60% to 34%, where it starts shifting off. And that kind of tracks with our overall usage of those programs when we look at the annual usage. So that is not too unexpected. Then here's an interesting one, and this one we're going to have to dig into a little bit. So this looks at cultural diversity and perceived cultural inclusion. So perceived cultural diversity in our programs was fairly high at 68%. But then when asked about perceived cultural inclusivity in our programs, it dropped down to 53%. So that is one we're going to have to spend some time unpacking and seeing where the disconnect is between those two. That was an interesting point of conversation for us when we were reviewing these. Attitudes towards Columbia Association. CA plays a very important role in maintaining the quality of life here. 78% responded in the top 2. I feel like Columbia Association is responsive to the feedback. 77% were in the top 2. I feel like Columbia Association offerings reflect my cultural identity. This one was 74, which is a little bit higher than the other 2. So there's a little bit to unpack there. Different question asked a different way. So we have some work to do understanding that. And I often find myself traveling outside of Columbia to access services and programs that I desire, and only 12% offered the top 2 on that one. Although when they did, there's another slide that's not in here. I didn't bring the whole deck. You guys didn't give me all night. But they most likely travel out for health and wellness activities and events. Were the top 2 reasons why, and it was the end was a little over 100. I think it was about 130 said that, but that was interesting. But overall, only 12% said they went out. And then clarity of communications. Are we reaching people? Are people understanding what we're saying? And actually, we had a fairly strong response with this one, so we were glad to hear that. With the clarity of communications, now we just have to make sure we're reaching people. And we're doing that with the new website. We're working on our email communications. We're changing our email communication vendor as well to do better targeting and work on that. So we are working on reaching more, but it's good to hear that when people are getting our messaging, they're understanding it and it's clear and concise for them. And then just opportunities that we came out of it. Really, the biggest opportunity was looking for the gaps in perception and engagement. Really creating a benchmark and giving us something to understand and work against and look where we can close the gaps. We have some things that are very strong. There are opportunities in other areas, but now as an organization, we have better insight into that. Creating greater awareness with greater personalization. One of the barriers to entry we talked about was not being relevant. So how do we work better on that and make things more personalized? We talked about that same thing with the website. There was a theme there. Identifying ways to increase the feeling of inclusivity in programming. We just talked about the inclusivity slide versus the diversity slide. What does that look like for us? Creating greater awareness of, say that fast, sustainability work to increase impact on the community. I mean, that work is very important. We hear about it a lot, but we're not reaching the greater community, and how can we work on improving that? And increasing awareness and ownership of the lower ranked facilities and programs that we have. Those ones that fell down further on the list gives us opportunities to create greater awareness around those and drive more participation, because we saw when people participate in these things, they are more engaged in the community. There's a positive benefit to that. Okay, that was a lot of slides.
You did it, Dan.
A lot of data.
Thank you so
Any
much.
questions?
Yes, about the brand awareness. Eric?
Yeah, could you back up several slides to the usage slide? Yeah,
Is that?
no,
There it is.
Yeah, there.
Thumb's too fast.
Yeah, so I'm looking at this, and I know intuitively that pools are probably one of the most common things that people use, certainly outside of the pathways in the open space. And yet it ranks in the middle, just above golf courses, where we only have a few hundred golf course members. So I'm trying to figure out why this survey is so skewed towards golf courses and dog parks and underrepresents pools.
It was a random survey, and this is how the residents responded.
It doesn't seem to jive with what I see on the ground. I mean, what I see on the ground is lots of people are using the pools. River Hill's got, 40,000 people using the pools roughly each year. And yet the golf courses, we only have a couple hundred members.
So, but you also discount the fact that Fit and Play members also have access to the golf courses. So we do have a significant amount of usage.
I get that, but there are certainly a lot more swimmers than there are golfers.
All right, thank you. Mike?
A couple questions, and I'll try to just ask them all at once. I'm glad to see that the trying to close the gap on the sustainability stuff is one of the objectives that came out of it, because certainly, you hear people from the CARES groups or Linda, like they're clearly getting a ton of community benefit out of it. And so that was pretty surprising. In the inverse, it's like, man, I got to go ice skating more. But on the, I guess I have a kind of two methodology questions. Is there any concern about selection effect biasing these responses, right? That the people that were more likely to respond to the survey were skewed in a certain way versus, and I know it was, tried to be random, but still there can still be selection effects. And second, on the brand awareness, which is like one of the very first things, confidence in ownership, that's the one I'm trying to think of. In the survey, were there like false flags thrown in there to say, like, kind of throw people off to like say like, hey, Roger Carter Center, is CA responsible for that?
I don't remember the answer to that question. I'd have to look. I think the question listed a bunch of facilities and then which ones do you think CA owns? So I don't know that there were false flags, but there was what do you think CA owns? So that was one question. Then
just any thoughts on whether there's selection effect in
I'm
the
trying
survey?
to remember whether I think they called people. I think this was a phone interview, so it wasn't just a random send out and hope they come back, because they really did have to select. Like they were required to hit some of these demographic metrics, so it wasn't just a blast out. We paid, it was almost $30 a survey to make sure we hit these criteria numbers.
Okay.
Bill?
Yeah, once again, just another great report. I appreciate it. I am not a demographer by profession, but I will admit that it's a hobby of mine. And those demographics are pretty spot on. That's pretty good work. So kudos to the group that did that. And we got our money's worth. That's good stuff. I had one question about the clarity and communication slide. Yeah. There were 5 possible answers and four actually registered on the bar. I was really happy to see over 70% thought we communicated fairly well, but I was trying to figure out which one dropped out. I know everybody's just speeding through the slides. I apologize. It's almost the last one. There you go. I'm not good with shades of green, so which one, is it not at all clear or slightly clear that?
Not at all clear.
So at least somebody said it's slightly clear that CA communications are at least slightly clear to us. And that's the bottom, that's the floor. Yeah. Everything else is good to the other side. So I just want to make sure I had that straight. Thank you. I appreciate it. Good work.
It was very good information. We were excited to get it. And there were some surprising things in there. And we'll use it as a benchmark. We plan on doing this every couple years just to see how we can continue to work against it. Tim, Julie, and I have been meeting on opportunities to leverage the data and keep moving forward. Am I getting the?
Mike, second time.
Thanks. Do you have trend analysis compared to the last time that this kind of brand survey was conducted?
No, and that's the last time we did it. It was a different methodology and the reporting of different questions. So when we did it this time, we were kind of, okay, let's set the benchmark so that we have something to work against, and let's do it on a regular basis. I think the last time we did it was in 2018 or 19, but we had a marketing firm do it, and it was done from a marketing perspective, so it really wasn't relevant. And I didn't want to duplicate that survey again because it didn't tell us. This information is more relevant to the organization and not just marketing.
Ashley?
Yes, I have a few things that I wanted to touch on. I'm always interested in survey data. Mike actually talked about one of the things I was curious if we had any false things in there. I would be very curious about what the answer was, since I know there's a lot of confusion in our community between CA and especially Howard County Parks and Rec, or Rec and Parks, I always mix that up. Since it is so hard to get folks to participate in the surveys, right? And then the few who answer, it becomes like the vocal minority, right? And it can drastically skew what some of the answers can be. I was curious, not even just for this survey, but since we do so many surveys, have we ever considered incentivizing the surveys? Like it's a raffle to win free swag. Or like sometimes you can have those stands where it just has the iPad and, you know, the member while they're at the athletic club, there are definitely folks who hang out at the athletic club, right, for a long period of time, taking advantage of the fact of like meeting them where they are. So incentivizing was one of it. I would be really interested in comparing the frequency report that Eric had you pull back up compared to the usage reports, just out of curiosity how that lines up. And then I was also interested, will these results drive recommendations for services or facilities that we continue to use and invest in, or recommendations of programs to eliminate, you know, different directions to go?
So you asked a lot of questions.
It's my turn.
I will have to look at the surveys again, and maybe by the end of the night I'll be able to share, because I have the survey in here. Then on we have looked at giving swag for various things. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. You know, in this survey, the swag was they were paid to get these results. So they had to keep dialing until they got the results. And then we targeted specific demographics. So this was very intentional. You are going to give us this information. You know, that was, we went through all the different methodologies, and most people just wanted to throw out a survey and hope people respond. And no, that's not what we wanted. And then we wanted representative demographics too. So this one was very specific. And yeah, surveys are weird. On the customer experience survey we do, I get 2,000 responses. You know, other surveys we do, we get 100. You know, it's hit or miss. So we look at different ways of doing that. And then on your last question of will it drive programming decisions? Indirectly, I don't want to make direct decisions from this. This is kind of an informative and where are gaps and opportunities and it's more about brand awareness and sentiment rather than programming discussions. But it will let us know how people are viewing those programs and are they connecting them in the community. And if the ends are very small, then that gives us an opportunity to say, maybe we could move this up a little bit and look for opportunities there. But I want to be careful not to make too many organizational programmatic decisions based on one survey.
Right, yeah, like I get that the usage of each facility obviously is going to be a big part into it, but like the horse center, for instance, right? I'm not sure what the actual usage is of that, so is it worth investing the brand awareness of like, this is a Columbia system?
Yeah, the end on that was 24, and that's a whole different conversation.
Yes.
There's other things besides the survey that revolve into that.
Anything else about the brand awareness survey? Okay, anything else from anything that Dan presented then? All right, well, thank you so much, Dan. That was great stuff and borderline overwhelming, but
I hope I didn't
really
hurt
helpful.
anybody's eyes with all those slides.
No, it was great. Sean?
All right, so next up is, as you recall, Jeremy was here at the last meeting with his team to talk about our long-term capital planning and the needs around that. It was eye-opening, so that's great, but you never talk about capital without talking finances. So Sean McCullum, our Senior Vice President and CFO, is here tonight to talk about our current financial position and also our future forecasting and what that's going to show.
Sean, before you start, we're running low on time. What are we thinking? Like, do we just want to say 30 minutes just to err on the side of caution? Is there a motion to add 30 minutes?
So moved.
Thank you, Bill. Is there a second?
Second.
By Mike. Is there any objection?
Which agenda item are we on?
We are still on 7D, the board goals.
Yeah, what are you adding 30 minutes to?
The board goals, because we have 5 minutes and change left.
Board goals.
No, we're still on 7D, which is board goals and updates. Dan provided his stuff, and now we're going on to Jeremy, and we're running low on time.
I'm on board.
Yes. Okay. So just to clarify, we're adding 30, just to err on the side of caution, hopefully. Bill said made the first, Mike made the second. Is there any objection? Great. Sean, I'm ready.
Thank you, appreciate it. So as Sean said, really the focus over the next few slides, really the current financial position, and we're going to talk about where we are. And then we're going to pivot to future outlook. We're going to try to combine everything that's been, we talked about so far, all the studies and including long-term. We're going to try to bring all that together for you. So having said that, let me move forward to the next slide. Let's see.
Click first. Click the mouse first.
So this is not forward and forward, sorry guys. So there you go. So we are exceptional in terms of financial position. And the data I am telling you is looking at between FY23 and FY26. And this organization done a great job in terms of robust liquidity growth, and that means emergency cash reserves. And I'm sure the board members do remember the need for that, what prompted that. But we went from $8 million from 23 to 18.8 million end of this year. So that shows a very dedicated, strong safety net and high fiscal discipline. Well done. And I know that was deliberate by the organization. And the second one really is a significant deleveraging, right? So what we did in that time period, if you look at our long-term debt, that's on our balance sheet, we paid it from $27 million from 23 to 11.8 million. And we are at a pace to pay them all up by FY30, and then it's going to go away. I'm going to tell you about what prompted that 27 million into a couple of slides further. But this reduces the interest expense and improves future borrowing capacity. And then ultimately, we have also shown consistent growth in terms of, our retained earnings and EBITDA, our ability to hold on to it, right? So as you can see, that growth went from 121.7 million to 146 million, a 20% growth. And finally, is the liability reduction. So if you take a look at it, our total liabilities have decreased from just about 16 million, declined by 16 million, I should say. That's a 30% decline. And it shows significantly strengthening or getting stronger in terms of liquidity and solvency of this organization. So overall message, we are in a great position and well done. And some of these were deliberate, intended action by the board and the management to get this organization where we are today. Well done. So forgive me, this mouse is a little bit touchy as I go through. So one of the key financial ratios in the finance area is one called current ratio. As you can see, the formula, current assets divided by current liabilities. In FY23, it was 2.63. FY26, it went up to 3.0. What does that mean? If you read the box on the right side, it says liquidity is king, right? CA is becoming more liquid and less risky over time. A current ratio above 2.0 is widely considered an indicator of strong financial health. A ratio of 3.0 higher is often viewed by lenders as exceptionally strong, signaling in companies' ability to pay is stats. Well done. The second point is debt to equity ratio. This is the deleveraging, and they look at, okay, what percentage of your assets, liabilities. So right now, our equity, that ratio went from 0.44, dropped down to 2.6. Kind of goes the reverse way. But what it means is that this is a win for the organization overall. It shows a financial independence, a cleaner balance sheet. For not-profits, a debt to net asset ratio below 30% is considered a hallmark of a financial stability. It also indicates that we have significant available capacity to fund future capital projects. And finally, the cash ratio. And obviously, the cash is king. We always know that. But obviously, we are right now moving to about 1.0 is a significant milestone. What it means is that the organization's cash-only position is now larger than its short-term liabilities. Any questions so far? These are some metrics and highlights. The organization done well.
Joe? Do you mind if I jump in?
Yeah,
okay, great. Sorry, I want to make sure I got that right. Hey, I know that we have two loans. Have we had to access our line of credit at all?
No, I'm going to show some data for you.
Sorry.
Coming to it, yep. Okay.
Sorry.
So we'll be sharing this presentation with you later. So this is actually the balance sheet supporting all the ratios I shared with you. So I highlighted for you, if you look at in yellow, that's the cash emergency reserves. And when you get a chance, take a look at it. But these all of the ratios driven off this balance sheet. So now I'm going to pivot a little bit into the future outlook, right? And what we're going to do in terms of leverage, we're going to look at the years FY28 through 32. And we're going to talk about aligning revenues with expenses. And we're going to look at maintaining annual CIP funding. And then we're going to talk about incorporating CIP long-term borrowing into our conversation. I hope everybody can see this. This is business as usual. What you have is on the right, the actuals, 23, 24, 25. And then the next two, LE stands for last estimate or forecast, 26 year end, as well as 27. If you notice for 27, I'm using LE because since we did the budget, we have, based on the improvements in the 26 LE, we believe the numbers will be slightly better than what we presented in the budget. So that's why it's showing 27 LE. Then on the right side, you will see years 1 through year 5, where we think we're projecting out. The basis for projecting out is the variable of this, if I can get my cursor, I don't know, you may not be able to see this 3.7% CAGR. Those of you, if you don't know what CAGR is compound annual growth rate, or the mean. So it removes all the volatility between the years. It just simply averages. So our average for the past 3 years has been between 24 being the base year and 25, 26, 27, 3 years out. Our revenues are growing at 3.7%. Our expenses are growing 5.8%. And then if you look at this, and what it does, it takes the LE 27 and projects it out based on what the ratios. You got your revenue growth getting you to 111 million by year 32. Expenses by year 5 to $150 million. However, if you take a look at the operating surplus and deficit line, I think we are fine for the first couple of years, but by the time we get to year 4 and 5, we are producing loss or deficit in this case, if we stay the course, okay? And then this also assumes that we're gonna do a depreciation of about 13.5 million, similar to what we are doing, because we are putting into the business about $15 million of CIP, or capital improvement plan. So if we stay this course and continue $15 million, 3.7% revenue, 5.8% expense growth, we are going to be actually in the cash deficit in terms of years. So obviously, this is showing that there are many reasons we're going to talk about why we are at a pivotal point for this organization to really take a look at our behavior, what we are doing, and what we need to really talk about changing.
Keep going. We'll do scenario one.
So this is one scenario, scenario one. And again, it's not the day scenario as we go through. And Sean and the senior staff, we went through a number of what ifs. And this is one of the scenarios. So what it does, it looks at every year, it keeps the revenue growth rate at 3.5% every year. And then it gradually keeps year one the 5.8% expense and drops it into 5, 4, and then aligns with the revenue growth. The reason why we are going slow but deliberate decline in the expenses, so we don't want to shock the system. And we don't want to go drastically, start cutting services, and we want to, make sure that we don't disappoint our communities by cutting services. So we just want to make sure we deliberate but purposefully cutting expenses, or aligning expenses, I should say. And then in this model, we're also looking at, maintaining the same depreciation amount. But however, what we are doing right now is we are going from $15 million per year CIP. By year 4, 5, we are dropping by $1 million to $14 million. By doing that, that enables us, if you take a look at this highlighted orange, $3.2 million right after year FY30, that's when we pay off all our outstanding term loans. By this year, we're assuming we're borrowing $50 million to start our long-term capital investment. I'm going to show you an amortization schedule. That $3.2 million is the 25-year loan at 4%. So this is our initial phase of rebuilding our community over the next 10, 15, 20, 30 years. And that's one option. As I said, this is, so revenue expense growth trends, right? So Right now, expense management with laser focus, we can align revenue and expense growth rates by year 4, as this organization has done in the past. So what you don't see is I have an analysis going back to 2015. I have 15, 16 years of history. So that's where these ratios are coming in. So as you can see in this chart, the 3-year revenue is at 3.7%, expenses are 5.8%. But if you look at the last column, 10-year CAGR, the organization was doing fine. They were doing 3.1, 3.4, keeping revenue expense in line. But Dan often reminds me there's a lot happened year 5 and year 3. The county raised minimum wage. We had the impact of the COVID-19. Pool chemicals went up by 40%. Labor expenses went up 40%. So some of that exceeded the revenue growth that we get from annual charge or rate increases. So that's some of the dynamics we got to talk about. But the organization has the ability to go back and get it in line. So this is a second scenario. We said, okay, so what happens actually, the difference between the prior scenario and this one really is ultimately this right here. So we are going back to spending $15 million CIP. But to do that, we are going to need about 1 penny increase in the annual charge, which equals to $762,000, and 1% cap increase, and that equates to $418,000. So some of those, about $1.2 million, that will allow us to bring this CIP back to $15 million. And we still continue to invest $3.2 million by initiating the $50 million loan. Obviously, if we produce more cash flow, we can go to $100 million, so that line needs to be $6.4 million. But right now, this is we're thinking $50 million, start the process, and $3.2 million. So, and continue to invest $15 million. Do not cut the existing CIP that goes into the business as usual. So what does that mean in terms of per resident cost? And we looked at it in detail. And average residential annual charge is $1,277. Average commercial annual charge is $16,626. 1 cent increase for residential properties is $19 per year. These are based on FY25 numbers. 1% cap is $12 per residential property. Combined, you're looking at $31 per year per household. So this is the data behind the $3.2 million as simply amortization schedule. And we are starting with $50 million for percent borrowing and for 25 years. And then the payment is $3.2 million. And obviously borrowing $50 million with FY32 is going to be a $31 increment increase in the annual charge. So that means it's going to go from $1,277 to $1,308. Just a reminder, you look back between 1985 and 1995, what this organization was doing in terms of borrowing behavior. So what you see here is really $10 million in 95, $4.7 million. So every year, this organization had to borrow while they were still trying to finish up rebuilding the organization and maintaining what was built in the early 80s and 70s. But interesting data point, though, take a look at their ability to generate operating surplus, right? So it was almost nonchalant. They had to borrow the money to be able to do all of that. So between those two dates, the organization borrowed $86 million. So what are the next steps? I mean, Dan already talked about rate study. We also have in the works economic analyses. This is part of what Jeremy is undertaking with the rest of the executive team, is the long-term capital assessment by engaging a consultant. All those three pieces eventually come back into a unified strategy that will have to come together, as to what we're going to move on next. So really, that's the my presentation to you. Hopefully, is somewhat clear. If not, I'll be more than happy to answer your questions.
Very good. Thank you, Sean.
You're welcome.
Anyone, Eric?
So I see your warnings, and thank you for your in-depth details. But raising the annual charge, in my opinion, is completely unacceptable, given how much we're already paying. And I find it also problematic that our operating expenses are going up 5% every year. That's double inflation. So we need to do a better job of controlling our costs. We can't just keep charging our residents more and more and more and more money to get the same or fewer pools. That's completely unacceptable. We need to do a better job controlling costs and giving our residents a better value. So the first question I've got is why? Why are our expenses going up 5 to 6% every year? What is driving that?
Sure, I can answer that. I mean, you look at the current climate we're in, there's tariffs, there's been cuts, inflation is getting higher. Interestingly enough, the county has the same issue and their rates are exactly the same as us. So this is a common, theme across a lot of businesses and organizations. So yeah, we're looking at it. I think Sean showed you historically over time, they can be brought in line, but there's a lot of factors that economically that are out of our control that we have to deal with. So, we've showing there's a path forward and we're working towards that. That's the goal for the next 5 years.
Any other comments or questions about the financial outlook? Bill?
A couple of things. Sean, thank you for a great report. I mean, everybody's knocking it out of the park tonight. I'm sorry to be so happy with everybody, but it's true. It's Dan, great job. Sean, great job. It's interesting. I put a very similar chart as far as the financial outlook and the potential of expenses exceeding revenue in my January report to my village. I have almost the exact same chart. It's like mine's, I guess, or something. It's great. Beyond that, just a few things about what was going on in the 1980s when we were borrowing $85 million. It's important to realize that at that time, the annual charge was 75 cents per hundred, not the 68 that we're using now. It's also important to realize that there was no cap on how much it could increase year over year. And it did increase pretty substantially year over year during those times. There was a lot of property appreciation. And then thirdly, there were about 10,000 of unbuilt units that when loans were being taken out, favorable terms could be handled because they saw that 10,000 more lien assessments were coming down the line. And we just don't have any of those conditions right now. So I think 1 penny and 1%, is that what you were saying? Is a good first step. My concern is that when does the next increase come after that? And I don't know how far in the future we can, uncertainty grows as you go each year, but I don't know how far in the future it goes for that.
Bill, I'll just to add on to your history, thank you. We actually talked about that. And what I forgot to tell you is actually this organization also borrowed FY 2015 $30 million term loan. It was a 15-year loan with 3.63%, and then in FY 21, there was additional $20 million put into business. So what we are paying right now on our balance sheet, that 11 left over from that. So this organization constantly borrow to finance. As far as in terms, what is the next tranche of the investment will come in, and just respectfully want to remind the board that this organization haven't raised the rates in 23 years. Look at the compounding impact of the inflation over 23 years, and then look at the size of the organization in 23 years, how much we have grown in terms of population, the facilities, and what it takes, which is complicated further by the additional pressures put on by COVID-19, where everything, you couldn't find anything, we are still living today. Everything is costing more money. Tariffs are complicated more. So as I mentioned during my presentation, the growth, organic growth on the revenue is not catching up with the expenses that we have to pay unless we realign what we offer, what we can buy for that, get it in line with the revenue. Again, I want to respectfully remind the board, when we do that, there are some trade-offs we have to do. And that will be, finding out what do we do less of, what do we do more of. Clearly, at the end of the day, we're going to do less of if you align it. In the absence of it getting revenue growth. So, again, coming back to your point, what is the next tranche of rate increase? All subject to, do we go with 50 million or do we go with 100 million? So if you go with 100 million, and how fast this board wants to give us time, is it going to 10 years, 20 years? Remember, it took 50, 60 years to build this community. And it's going to take time to go back and refurbish, rejuvenate. And is that going to happen 5 years, 10 years, 20 years? Or do we go and make it over 30 years, 50 years, so our borrowings are small, so that increments are smaller? But, so those are all the things that we have to balance. Obviously, if we decide that we're going to big in the front because there are some facilities that need immediate attention, that's 2 pennies or 3 pennies more, right? So then we have to come back to the board. But that's all subject to, how much we want to invest, how fast we want to invest.
Mike?
I really appreciate the presentation, so thank you. It's really good insight, and I look forward to the next steps of being able to line up some of those projections with more visibility on like what Jeremy was presenting last week about how those things kind of match up with one another. But one clarifying question, the scenarios you presented, were there any assumptions being made about membership rates and how membership rates, because that's another source of revenue. So how did that factor into those projections?
So in this, actually, the 3.5% growth is really untold existing revenues, which combines annual charge as well as the membership rates. Because it's a blended rate.
Understood. My question is this just assuming like standard year-over-year increases to membership rates and no significant changes that may result from a membership rate study?
100%.
Okay, thank you.
100%, yeah.
Thank you. Anyone else? Nothing online. All right, Eric, second and last time.
So I certainly do understand the effects of compounding. I've actually seen in my annual charge bill. Since I moved here just about 8 years ago, my annual charge bill skyrocketed over 30%. And if we start adding additional rate increases and cap increases, it's going to go even higher. The question I have is, Reston's fairly similar to us. They've got pools, they've got pathways, they've got all that stuff. They're similar size, they're about 2/3 the size of us. But their annual charge is less than $1,000. And for less than $1,000, they get to use their pools and their tennis courts. Well, we got to pay another $500 to use our tennis courts and our pools, on top of paying more than they're paying on average. And in River Hill, we're paying double and triple what they're paying in Reston. So how is Reston able to provide these basic HOA services for much, much less? Why are their costs so much less than ours on a per resident basis? Why are we paying so much? We need to get our expenses under control. This is becoming a huge problem, and we just can't keep taxing our residents higher and higher and higher and providing fewer and fewer services. This is not good for the organization, it's not good for the community. So we need to do a better job controlling our costs.
John?
I'm not going to go into detail about the differences between Columbia Association and Reston. We've talked about that before. It's come up. There's a lot of variables you're missing that are going on in Reston that are not going on here in Columbia Association with regard to the annual charge and with regard to usage of their facility. So if the board wants to make it, a topic of discussion or a goal, we can provide a great comparison in the future of communities that are similar to Columbia Association, and we can include Reston in that.
Any other discussion on this? All righty. Oh, sorry, Bill.
Just one final note, Mr. Chairman. I just want to call to your attention. About a month ago, we received a letter from several villages here in Columbia, where we all live, stating that there were skyrocketing energy, labor, and insurance costs that were really pushing them to their limits. And all of those costs that they see, the Columbia Association also sees, but on an order of magnitude or two greater because of just the larger size of the Columbia Association. So we really ought to take a look at what's going on locally here amongst ourselves and recognize that these are tough times and that we really need to we have hard decisions that we have to make. And we should make those clear-eyed and with the best information available. I think Sean's done a great job of providing us with very good information that we can't necessarily comment on immediately and should internalize and look at this in the next meeting or into the next board year. And lastly, just something else for you, Mr. Chairman. If this was the board of Budweiser and we had board members who were always telling us how great Miller beer was, I don't know how well regarded those board members would be, and that's going to be my final comment.
Very good. Any other discussion or any other commentary? All right, very good. All right, we will go on to our next agenda item, which was item 7E. There is a memo that's in the packet. Do you want to say anything, Sean, about that memo?
No, there was a request from the board after the library was in to talk about the proposed new library, about just discussing some challenges and opportunities. And that's included in the memo in the packet.
Yep, very good. So this is really just an opportunity for any discussion, questions, comments based on that memo that is in the packet. Ashley.
What do you think the odds are of the public restrooms being incorporated?
I met with the designers in the webinar and mentioned that would really like to see that. It's important to us, so they took note of that. I can't guarantee. Yeah. But I made a very solid argument.
I need to call out an observation. We have got to cut the side chatter. It's very distracting, and we need to continue our conversation. So we need to cut the side chatter. Thank you. Just anything else? Bill, sorry.
One last thing. That as part of the design that was presented that we saw, there was next to the library there was a parking garage. Parking garages are taxed at $0. It's like open space. It's assessed at $0. And converting that parking lot currently there to a parking garage may result in a net loss, minimal, but net loss in assessment share we would get from that property. So just something to keep in mind there.
Yep. Any other comments, questions, or responses to the memo that's in the packet? Okay, well, we'll leave it at that for now then, and yeah, we'll leave it at that for now. We'll move on to new business then, 8A, for the board governing documents, board responsibilities. Sean, John?
John?
Yes, this is, again, part of the continuing effort to consolidate the policies. There really is nothing new in here. It's just a consolidation of existing policies, existing law. You'll see at the front on the packet, agenda item 9. What's new is we have a new mission statement, so that's new. But the rest of it is the introduction to the board manual, basically, and then responsibilities of the board. These are not controversial. These are things that are previously set forth and specifically set forth in the law. And we cite the law, which is the Maryland Corporate Law, Corporation Associations, and this section talks about fiduciary duties. So this puts it all in one place, makes it more clear, but there's nothing here that is should be of concern. It should be basically straightforward.
All right, very good. Thanks, John. Any comments about this? Eric?
Yeah, I moved to add under responsibilities of the board.
Eric, we're in new business. We don't accept motions in new business.
You don't?
We do not.
Okay, when do I get to make the motion then?
When it's in old business.
Okay, well then I'll make a comment then.
Okay,
So Under 6, it says we appoint the president and chief executive officer to manage CA and set the president CEO compensation. What is missing here is that we should also, as a board, let's see here. We should also, as a board, be reviewing and approving the compensation of other officers and key employees. This is what we say we do in the 990, so we should add another bullet to say that this is one of our responsibilities, is to review and approve the compensation of other officers and key employees.
Okay. Any other comments or thoughts on this item? Sky?
Sure. The board is responsible only for hiring and overseeing the president CEO rather than his subordinates. So I'm just not sure how that falls together.
And I want to make sure that we, thank you, but I want to make sure that we're sticking to our topic, which is the board responsibilities document that's in the packet that John discussed. So are there any other thoughts or comments about this document for people that haven't gone yet? All right, Eric, second time.
Sky, to reply to your concern, 10990, there's actually a box that says, does the process for determining the compensation include a review and approval by independent persons? And one of the questions is, do we review and approve, does an independent set of persons review and approve the compensation for other officers and key employees? And on our 990, we select yes. So we state that the review and approval of compensation by key officers and employees is done by independent persons. In other words, us, the board, because we don't have a compensation committee. So that's what we say on our 990. What? We do have a compensation committee?
Finish your thought, please.
So that's what we say on our 990. That's what we report to the IRS. Our policy should be consistent with what we're reporting. So we should make sure that our policies are consistent with our 990 form.
Any other comments on the items presented in the packet? I just want to say thank you. It looks great. I'm glad to have it all compiled in one spot and it not be all over the place and cleaned up. So thank you for that effort. So that looks great. We will move on to 8B, which is the FY26 financials. Sean and Sean.
Sean McCollum.
Thank you. Before I start my presentation, I just want to remind the board that there was an audit committee meeting on Tuesday where we extensively went into details and variances. So what I'm going to share with you really over the next couple of minutes is very high level, but I do suggest that you go look at the financials and listen to the discussion. It's always an engaging and productive engagement there. So the Q3 year-to-date revenues were about 1.7 million, better than budget, or 2%. And the bottom line for 9 months, the operating profit was about 5.7 higher than what was budgeted. And then on a year-over-year basis, the revenues grew about $1.9 million. But as it was budgeted, we ended up spending $3.2 million for the same year-over-year. And looking at the full year, we expect to be better about $1.2 million from the budget, or roughly about $88 million, $87,658,000. And then expenses, we're expecting expenses to be favorable, about $3.2 million. So combine those two, we expect surplus to be about $4.4 million higher. So based on the Q3 forecast, if you look at if you go to the website, you'll see this full consolidated P&L, which is page 17. And you will see that our surplus at the time was about $7.5 million. But as I presented to you during my earlier presentation, we see since then some upside about $1 million. So that's why it's about $8.1 million there. So overall, it's a great performance. But please do remember, simply looking at this $8.1 million doesn't mean $8.1 million cash. We continue to spend still, $15 million into our CIP, and we still pay $5.4 million debt service. So just keep that in mind, because we are showing surplus doesn't mean we are floating in cash. So really, that's the takeaway for you. Any questions?
Very good. Thank you, Sean. Bill, do you want to say anything from audit?
Just as the committee chair, great job by Sean and all his staff. It was a great presentation. If you get a chance to listen to the audio tape, we went pretty long on questions about each of the variances. Overall good. We look good for going into year end, and that's it.
Thank you. Mike?
Just a question about one of the variances. One of the variances was something like an unexpected increase in vehicle maintenance for outdoor pools, and that seemed like an odd thing to have an increase for in the middle of the winter, was vehicles for outdoor pools. So I didn't really. I'm sure I'm missing a really simple explanation there. I would have understood if it was like snow removal equipment maintenance costs went up, but I didn't know outdoor pools had their own vehicles or anything like that.
Yeah, I saw that question come in, Mike. I have not had a chance to get back with our team to get an answer for you, but that's something we can provide.
Okay, great.
Mm-hmm.
Eric?
So this year we're currently for this quarter, we're currently beating budget by $5.8 million. Last year we beat budget by $6.9 million. FY24 we beat budget by $4.9 million. FY23 we beat budget by $4.3 million. FY22 we beat budget by $10.3 million. That was the COVID year, so that's a little bit different. But if anyone sees a pattern here, we seem to beat budget by several $1 million every year. So the first question I have is why? Why does our budget seem to be biased towards allowing us to beat budget by millions of dollars each year? And the second question I have is, if we assume that we'll follow this pattern going forward and continue to beat budget by $5, $6 million every year, that would seem to me that we could not have to increase the annual charge in the future, because increasing the annual charge and increasing the cap would bring in, $1 million at most? And here we're being budgeted by $5 million. So not only could we not increase that if we continue to beat budget by $5-6 million each year, we could even reduce the annual charge, because our budget doesn't take into account this budget beat every year. And if we reduce the annual charge for this, if we had to reduce the annual charge for this year by something like 6 cents, we would have come out with the same net assets that we had budgeted for. So the question I have is, why does our budget always seem to be easily beaten by millions of dollars each year? And if we take this pattern into account going forward, is it not possible to actually reduce the annual charge?
Are there any other questions that folks have or other comments? Bill, did you want to hop in the queue?
Sure, yeah. Eric, let me just try and lay this out for you. Let's assume that we're going to hit $8 million as our net increase in assets at the end of the year, April 30th. We then have to go through the first quarter of FY27. Interesting characteristic of the first quarter of FY27 is our assessment money does not come in until the last month, until it starts July 1st. Hold me up here. Hold on. I have the mic. If we start with $8 million on May 1st, we generally run about $3 million in revenue. As a corporation, we run $7 million in expenses on a monthly basis. So $8 million plus $3 million would get us to $11 million by the end of April, or I'm sorry, by the end of May. But then we would have to subtract out $7 million in expenses, so we would only have, of that original $8 million, $4 million left. Now we got to get through June, and June is a huge month. That's when we start up all the pools. That's when everything hits. We got the birthday party, for Columbia. There's a lot of stuff going on. It's usually a 3 pay period month, so payroll gets hit hard. We start that month with $4 million. We add in the $3 million that we make in revenue on average. That gives us $7 million. But we run on average $7 million in expenses. So that indicates that at an $8 million increase in net assets at the end of this fiscal year, when we get to July 1st, when we send out the bills for the assessment, we will have $0. That's it. That's where the money is, Eric. It's not free money to reduce the annual charge. It is not anything like that. This is just simple math of actually conducting operations as a corporation.
Bill?
Stop. You're out of order. Everyone will be reminded to direct your comments to the chair as we go forward. Are there any other comments or questions about what was just presented by CFO Sean? Eric, second time.
Bill, if getting through operations requires beating budget by $5 million every year, we've got a problem. We have a serious budgeting problem. If the only way we get through May, June, July is to beat budget by $5-6 million every year, then we've got budgets that don't make any sense. So what I'm talking about is not the day-to-day expenses and how we get from one month to the next. What I'm talking about is, why are we beating budget by so many $1 million? And if we are, it strikes me that we're overcharging our residents by that amount. So, yeah, why are we overcharging our residents by $5.8 million? Where's this money going?
Board members will be reminded that you should direct your comments to the chair. CFO Sean, did you want to say something?
Yeah, Chair, if I may respond to that. First of all, historically beating the budget is actually not relevant at this point, because you have to take a look at historically where we spent the money. So if you look at our cash flow, yes, indeed, we beat the budget. We also spent $15, $16, $17 million. We had so what we beat the budget ended up paying our CIP and our cash flow. And so I can also tell you, all of the municipalities and not-for-profits deliberately conservatively budget for that. You don't want to aim high and end up missing millions because you don't have the capability of going back and redoing it. Second thing. The third is, as we move forward, both Stefan and I and Sean, executive staff, this year made some additional effort to really take a look at what we are doing. And we believe we have a solid budget for this year. And as you've seen in my presentation, we have already, based on the information available finishing this year, upgraded our FY27 LE, but that's all reflected in the forecasting I shared with you. 8.1 million, our budget was 3.9 and went to 6 million. And those are the numbers I share with you that still says we need additional revenue if we are going to do $15 million and we're going to invest $50 million in this organization. So missing budget is somewhat partly this story, is where the dollars are going at the end of the day once I make those dollars. Every dollar that we made from that went into the organization. So I just want to set the stage. And the forecasting we just presented to you, they all reflect the current thinking, not the budget.
Thank you. Any last thoughts on this item? All right, very good. We go to questions only. Does anyone have anything from the president's report there, Bill?
Just a quick question, really kind of Sean and Dan together. I saw the press release about the ice skating rink opening up in Meadowbrook Park. And when I read that, my first thought is, does that affect our schedule at all for any repairs we'd like to do at our ice rink?
Well, that's the current ice rink that we have would be part of the capital plan assessment. So we don't know. So we don't know what it's going to be at the end of the year. I mean, and frankly, the county is doing a lot of projects right now, or promoting a lot of projects, and there's a change in the county executive, so we're not sure what projects will be done and what won't be done.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Anything else oh, Dan, sorry.
I just wanted to answer the question, because I'll answer a question, I'd ask a question. There were no false flags. We had ways to eliminate people if they started not qualifying or looked like they weren't answering, but there wasn't false flags within the questions.
Anything else for questions only between president's reports, state and local legislation? IAT. Alrighty. Any new proposed topics? Alrighty. I'm not hearing any. I don't have any remarks. I'd love to get out a half hour early. Is there a motion to adjourn? From Mike, is there a second? Second. Second from Ashley. Any opposition? We are adjourned at 9:46. Have a good night, everybody.
I did not know.